Today in Calgary, doctors and concerned citizens gathered to protest the cuts to the refugee health care coverage. It was part of a national day of action with protests happening across the country. Ram Sankaran is an immigration lawyer in Calgary. He was one of the speakers at today's rally, and he joins me now on the line. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you doing today?
Fine, thanks. So how have your clients been affected by the changes to refugee health coverage?
Well, we've had basically the changes are kind of staggered depending on what status someone has. If you're someone who's a refugee claimant, then your access to vision, dental care, and medication was cut when the cuts came in. For people who are rejected refugee claimants, they lost all coverage, including medical coverage. And only could get treatment when the condition posed a threat to the public or security. In any event, what happened to our clients was probably instructive and, I think parallels what's been happening across the country. We had one client with a cancer of the uterus. She was unable to obtain medications to alleviate that condition. She did end up getting care, but it wasn't based on right, which would have been the case previously. We've had other clients who have been actually married Canadians and had pregnancies through that relationship who've also been unable to access basic care because they were failed refugee claimants. It didn't matter that they were now married to Canadians and basically on their way to permanent residence and, in most cases, eventually citizenship.
What do you see the consequences being of not having coverage for these refugee claimants?
Well, they're dire and they're stark. I mean, I don't think anyone can predict when they're going to have a medical problem. If you're someone who can't access medication or has to pay out of pocket for medication, including life-saving medications, then you face the real possibility of not being able to purchase those medications because you don't have money, or even if you do have money or savings, you're in a position where you're going to possibly bankrupt yourself in so doing.
How many people are we talking about here in Calgary and across the country?
Well, I can't really give you a full picture. I know the government's bandied about a number of $10 million in savings as a result of the cuts. If I understand that per capita, for refugee claimants, the average cost is about $552 per claimant. So I guess you could do the math that way. In terms of the numbers game, though, it's very interesting that the government has positioned this as sort of a $10 million savings. Well, it is and it isn't. These people have actually, most of them, been working and paying into the system through taxes. So it's a bit of a red herring in the way the government has presented this.
Tell us about the rules that are in place now. How clear are they from a legal perspective and to people who are affected by them?
Well, from a legal perspective and from an actual practical perspective, the rules have not been drafted or made clear in such a manner that providers are in a position to properly interpret them. For example, I think I just gave you the incident of my client who was pregnant.
Right.
She was a former refugee claimant. She had first-stage approval of her sponsorship, meaning that the application had been reviewed and the government had determined that the relationship was genuine. Normally, when you receive first-stage approval, you receive a work permit and then you receive Alberta health care based on that work permit. In our case, our client got her work permit, went to the Alberta government. They said, sorry, because you're a failed refugee claimant, and even though, regardless of the fact that you are now going to be on your way to permanent residence, you're not going to get coverage. And that is something that we don't think was anticipated by the changes. I think the government might even be surprised by that. And what we're seeing is more and more cases where that is the situation, where people are actually, while they may formally have been failed refugee claimants, they're on the way to other status, and they're still being denied based on these changes which aren't very well understood. With respect to claimants, I think the first time they find out that they're not going to be getting the sort of care is usually when they have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, it's very unfortunate because, as people with medical issues do, they get into panic mode. And, I mean, I'm not a doctor, but when you're thinking about how to pay for your medical care rather than trying to get better, I think it additionally complicates their lives stress-wise, emotionally, and harms them in that way as well.
Today was a National Day of Action here in Calgary and right across the country. What's your level of optimism that these cuts will be rescinded?
Well, my level of optimism on a political solution is low. I'm not sure there's the political will. I'm not sure it's that high-profile issue at this point for what we would hope people would do would learn about the issue and put pressure on their individual MPs to affect a solution. Now, that being said, this matter is being challenged in the courts. A number of groups, including the Canadian Association of Refugee Lawyers, as well as doctors' groups and child rights groups, have initiated a charter challenge to the cuts on the basis that they breach individuals' right to life, constitute cruel and unusual treatment and punishment, discriminate against nationals on the basis of their origin, and are inconsistent with Canada's obligations under international law.
When can we hear more about this case?
Well, as you're probably aware, the court system is fairly slow. The case was initiated in February 2013. I would encourage people to check up on the case and its progress through the Canadian Association of Refugee Lawyers website. I would also encourage people who want more specifics on specific cases to read through some of the case histories, which are compiled from throughout the country and include all sorts of horror stories regarding chemotherapy medications not being covered, radiation therapies not being covered, amputations occurring and no money for prosthetics. The list goes on, and I think people would be very interested to see what this $10 million savings apparently is doing to real people.
Ram, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Ram Sankaran is a Calgary immigration lawyer.